Hey everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Upcycled Adulting, where I am always working to help you overcome obstacles, grow and accomplish your goals, and create healthy habits. And today I'm going to be talking about one of the healthiest habits of all, and that is boundaries. We're in a boundary series right now. There are 3 separate videos about boundaries. Now, listen, boundaries is a big deal. It's a big deal for me, and I talk about boundaries a little differently than you will potentially hear other people talk about them. And the reason for this is that I come from a very complicated family background. As a child, I felt very, very parentified. I am the oldest child of teen parents. So I felt very responsible for my parents' feelings and experiences. I felt very responsible for my siblings. And I come from kind of a old school family concept where children really don't have boundaries or aren't allowed to, especially if it's inconvenient for any of the adults. Even as an adult, having boundaries can be really, really complicated in my family. In addition to that, there's a lot of muddying going on. So, as an adult, I became very aware that really no one has boundaries, right? Very few people in my family really have boundaries. Where they do, they are highly reactive type boundaries. They're very authoritarian type boundaries, like I am this person in the family, and so you must do as I say, things like that. And that's not really a boundary as much as that is a rule, right? And so today I want to talk about how you navigate boundaries. And in addition to that, I'm going to talk about how you do it in a family situation that's a little bit more like mine, or a relationship that's a little bit more like mine, right? You may find that this is true even in your partnership, right? In your in home relationship, that boundaries can be really, really complicated. How people receive boundaries, frame them, and feel about them is oftentimes very connected to their family of origin. Now, that doesn't mean you're not allowed to have boundaries, but there's some delicacy in communicating boundaries and enforcing boundaries that tends to come up in some of these situations. Now, please hear me and understand that the happiest people with the most fulfilling relationships have boundaries and generally have a lot of them. And so do not be dismayed. I don't want you to think that it's easier or better for you or better for your relationships to not have boundaries. This is not the way that it works. And that's not my opinion. That is statistically proven. This has actually been studied and this is statistically proven. So, we've already talked about how to create boundaries. And today I want to talk about communicating boundaries, because one of the issues that we generally struggle with is how do we navigate the boundary with another person, right? You can think it in your head, but when the rubber hits the road and you actually have to say it out loud, or you have to enforce that boundary, which we're going to talk about in the next video, it gets very, very difficult and complicated, and it can be really, really scary. So there's a lot of fear. I know I experienced a lot of fear in this area regarding communicating boundaries because I was afraid of conflict, right? I was afraid of conflict. I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of abandonment. I was afraid that if I said, I need this, or this is important to me, or this is a no for me, that it would create a lot of issues. But the reality of the situation is, and what I came to learn is that communicating your boundaries is actually a gift. It is a kindness. It is a show of vulnerability or an openness to another person, right? To be able to say, hey, it's really important to me that blank, be followed or be accommodated or be addressed, right? I really need X in this relationship, or I really need to not have Y in the relationship. It's very, very important. I had a incident with a family member. I am gluten free. I have a very extreme gluten reaction, and I'm actually allergic to casein. Like, I have an EpiPen. I am allergic to casein. I didn't discover this until I was an adult. I had consumed dairy and had pretty significant reaction to it, but I just thought everyone reacted like that, right? I know I totally normalized it. I ended up getting allergy tested, and my doctor was like, if you keep consuming dairy, it's only a matter of time before you're going to have an anaphylactic relationship. It was a big adjustment for other people to understand that I had this allergy, right? Because most people, when they think of allergies, they're like, you will be sick immediately if you eat that. You should know that by the time you're 5. If you don't, right? Is it even real? Et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, and I had a family member who just would not let this go. Just every time we went out to eat was like, why can't we split dessert? Are you sure we can't split dessert? But it's okay. We should split. It just went on and on and on. Even though they were being told repeatedly, I am allergic to it. Okay. And so I had asked for them to please stop, right? Please stop asking me to do this. Please stop what felt like guilting, right? Um, well, I can't have dessert if you don't have dessert, and I really want dessert. Okay. Well, are you saying that I'm bad because I'm having dessert? I can't eat it. I'm allergic to it. Okay. So I really had to talk to this person and say, hey, can we stop having this conversation? Okay. And I know for a lot of people, food is a big thing where you have somebody in your family who's like, but why won't you eat that? But don't you like my cooking? But okay, this is a thing that happens, especially around the holidays. And so I had to say, hey, this needs to stop. I can't eat that. I can't for health reasons, or just I'm not going to, right? And I need you to actually stop commenting about what I'm eating. Um, really stop commenting about what I'm eating. I'm not comfortable with that conversation. Okay, that is me being kind, right? Because when they continued to talk about it, I just stopped eating with them. That's how I resolved it. Listen, I didn't make a rule. I didn't make them stop doing anything. I can't make them stop doing anything. But I communicated the boundary because it was important to me. The relationship was important to me. I know for this person, it's important to them that we have meals together, that we share meals together. That's kind of their thing. But if this doesn't stop, I can't eat with them, right? It's not actually enjoyable for me to go have a meal with someone who is engaging in this with me, right? It's just not, it doesn't feel good for me. And so communicating that boundary was really a kindness because that gives them the opportunity to make the adjustment, to stop doing that so we can keep having meals together, right? Now, it's my choice how I decide to follow up with it. And I will definitely be talking and circling back to this story in the next video about enforcing your boundaries, right? But there are people that I know because I've tried to communicate boundaries with them, they're not receptive. They're not receptive. And there are also people that I know that I really can't trust. Okay. So I'm probably not alone in having the experience that there are some people that if you share your boundary with a person, if you say, hey, this is really important to me, they will actually, in a mocking type of way, I think maybe it is, they will actually do the thing that you've just communicated to them that you really, really need to not have happen. Um, in a way of kind of poking at you. Okay. Listen, these are not trustworthy people. Do not communicate your boundaries to them. It actually is not important that we communicate our boundaries to everyone. You don't even have to communicate them in advance. In the moment, you could simply say, hey, this isn't cool for me. I'm not comfortable with this. I have a boundary here, right? I feel like you're kind of crossing the line with me. There are some people, though, that you're not even going to do that with, that you're just going to implement your enforcement. You're just going to say, I'm just not going to do this. I'm just not going to Christmas because I know what happens there. And if I communicate my boundaries about what's going to happen on Christmas, if I communicate these boundaries, then I know that those boundaries will be weaponized. And knowing that that will upset me or knowing that that's problematic for me will just encourage them to do this thing more. So I'm just going to separate myself from this situation. Okay. Because truly, there are certain boundaries you should never have to communicate. They just go without saying, right? Boundaries like, I'm not cool with you publicly humiliating me. Okay. Now, what I consider humiliating might be different than what somebody else considers humiliating, but I'm just going to tell you that I have had oodles of humiliation. I'm not comfortable with you misrepresenting me. I'm not comfortable with you flat out lying about me. I'm not comfortable with you physically being aggressive with me. Okay. Meaning if you hit me, I'm not cool with it. All right. Those are boundaries that we should never feel like we need to communicate. Those kind of go without saying. Right. Now, there's some that you might think that goes without saying, and maybe in your family of origin, they don't, and you want to circle back and you want to make sure that you communicate them. One of the ones in my family, for example, was related to correcting my kids, right? This was true in both my husband's family and in my family. We had to establish, we had some of the oldest kids in the family, and we kind of had to establish, hey, if I'm in the room, I will correct my own kids, right? Certain things related to food or drinks. We have a lot of um, concern, I guess, or a lot of consideration around our kids drinking a lot of pop or eating a lot of candy. We just don't feel like it's good for them. Right. And that doesn't mean that they can't have pop or they can't have candy. And of course, the grandparents absolutely are totally into giving them pop and candy. But we did have a place where we were like, hey, let's just do a check in before they grab that fifth pop. Because we were really having these kinds of issues where it's like, if it's a free for all on Christmas Eve and they're sick on Christmas Day, that's going to be an issue. Our kids aren't used to drinking that much pop and they're going to get a tummy ache, right? So just kind of things like that we're really mindful of. You may know that we have a child who has autism. So we, for a little while, had them try an elimination diet. So it was really important for our families to understand that there were certain things that they weren't eating at that time just because we were doing an elimination diet. Now, it's not my job to call everybody in my family and say, hey, just so you know, they're doing an elimination diet. But it is important that if I say, oh, yeah, they're not eating that right now, they can't have that I'm not having pushback, right? Where I'm having somebody say, oh, come on, what's the problem? Oh, it won't hurt them to have, right? That my parenting choice is respected. And in some families, that's not something you can count on. And so there are places where you may need to communicate those boundaries, where communicating them in advance can make it a little easier, especially when we're navigating boundaries about this is a habit this person has, right? And so it's going to take them time to work through it. And so I'm going to need to take the time to actually go, oh, okay, yep. Just so you know, remember, hey, we're not doing that anymore. And so, really creating a lot of clarity about who actually deserves, who has earned enough trust for you to communicate your boundaries to them. All right. And if you're not sure, communicate something that's smaller, communicate something that's more no brainer ish, communicate something that's a little bit easier to accommodate and see what the person does with it. Okay. This is always a space where you can test the waters. You don't have to go all in. But when you become mindful of the fact that the reason you're communicating your boundary to this person is because you trust them, because you want to build closeness with them, because you want to build more trust with them, because you want to spend more time with them, right? That will help you better process the idea that communicating boundaries is a gift. It's not restrictive. It's not unkind. It's actually a gift. And it is a gift that we only give to people who we want to engage in deeper relationship with. It's only a gift that we give to people that we truly trust. Okay. And so when someone comes to you and says, hey, I have a boundary around this thing, or hey, I'm going to need blank in the relationship, or hey, I need blank adjustment or accommodation, you being able to reframe your brain and say, wow, this person really trusts me. That's why they're telling me this, right? So a lot of times when I communicate a boundary, I start off with those words. I'm telling you this because I trust you. I'm telling you this because our relationship matters to me. I'm telling you this because I know you love me. I'm telling you this because I want us to have a deeper connection. I'm telling you this because I love spending time with you. And this is a thing I need so that I can spend more time with you, right? So starting off from a place of, I'm telling you this because I honor this relationship and value it, really helps. It makes a huge difference. And I know that you can do this. I know that you can do this. You deserve to be seen in your relationships, okay? For the fullness that you are, for what you need there, for what you bring there. You deserve to be seen, and you deserve to be heard, and you deserve to have your boundaries heard and respected whenever possible, okay? So get busy thinking about what your boundaries are and really identifying who you really trust enough to start communicating your boundaries to. And if you're not sure, think of something small that you can put out there and see how that goes. All right, do not forget to like this video and to subscribe. If you have any questions about boundaries, I want you to put them in the comments so that I can circle back and answer those questions in the comments or create more video content that will answer your questions. Don't forget to check out how to create your boundaries and how to enforce your boundaries so that you have the complete series about boundaries. You are amazing and you deserve to live the life you've been dreaming of. And that includes having fulfilling and amazing relationships. Bye, everyone.